In this section, we are going to design and evaluate microservice architecture with backend for front-end patterns. Before design any architecture, we should ask ourselves what we have in our design toolbox and what we have learned so far. For that purpose, we write down the functional and non-functional requirements that are not changing, and we are using the microservice architecture. And if we expand our pattern and principles, we can see that we are in the microservice communication phase, and we have learned the microservice communication protocols: HTTP based RESTful API, GraphQL, gRPC, and WebSocket API. After that, we have learned API gateway patterns, which are the routing, aggregating, offloading pattern, and API gateway pattern. And now lastly, we have learned backend for front-end pattern that we are going to use when designing our microservice architecture. Here you can see the final architecture for our e-commerce application, which is applying the microservice architecture with backend for front-end pattern. Basically, we have four main architecture microservices in our architecture, and after that, as you can see that we have added two API gateways between the client and internal microservices, one for the web and one for the mobile application. We have two API gateways which applying the backend for front-end pattern. These API gateways provide to best match the needs of the front-end environments without worrying about the affecting other front-end applications. The backend for front-end pattern provides direction for implementing multiple gateways. So that means API gateways are segregated by client types. For example, in this image, mobile application needs different API requirements and can be developed specific APIs into API gateway mobile services. And also, if we give an example about the product microservices return the product list. In our web client UI, customer need to see all details of product information. However, mobile client user interface, customer need to see summarized data of product information. After designing our architecture, we can go to evaluate step. When we evaluate our architecture, we should always write down the benefits and drawbacks. If we expand our benefits, this is the client focused interfaces and provide minimal logic on the front-end code and streamline the data representation, and we have well-focused interface for the front-end client application. So with applying backend for front-end API gateways, client code become very easy and manageable, and every client has data-focused retrieve operation from the backend for front-end API gateways. But every architecture has benefits and drawbacks. What are the drawbacks of applying backend for front-end pattern? Basically, the main drawback is increased latency. Since you put additional layer into your network architecture, it become with increased latency, and it is good for large-scale microservice applications which has several client applications. As you can see that we have designed and evaluate our e-commerce application using the microservices and backend for front-end pattern.